You and I probably have a lot in common. I'm a mom. I work hard to provide for my family. I have goals and dreams, things I'm good at and things I wish I did better. A few years ago, I was on a treadmill. I think most of us find ourselves there at one time or another. We find ourselves repeating the same old habits and patterns, not really going anywhere. And maybe the treadmill we're on isn't even ours. Maybe it's made up of the expectations of other people. At a critical time in my life, I had a couple of conversations that made me hit the big red stop button on the treadmill. Then I did something revolutionary. I stepped off. I looked around at my life and asked myself, is this what I really want? Some people would call that a midlife crisis, but I didn't radically change my clothing style or buy a sports car. Instead, I started making small changes to my habits and routines. What I noticed was that one small change led to another, and over time, the difference was revolutionary. I think most people define midlife as a certain age, but maybe that's just the time when we take what was given to us in the beginning of our lives and decide to mold it into what we want for us, and not for anyone else. You can make small changes that are revolutionary too, like maybe listening to a new podcast. It's just one small thing, but it also might just be revolutionary. Hello, beautiful humans. Welcome to the Lori Vallow Daybell trial, Brandon Boudreaux edition in Arizona. Jury selection, day 1. Here we go. Round 3 of trials for Lori. I am Lori Vallow Daybell's first cousin, Megan Connor, and I have a podcast called the Midlife Revolution Podcast, and that's the intro that you just saw now. I am on season 3 now of my podcast. Season 3 is a collection of all of the different videos and interviews that I've done regarding Lori and her case over the last several years. I didn't really get involved in speaking up about the case until 2023, when her first trial was starting in Arizona. Sorry, not in Arizona, in Idaho. And here's what we're going to do today. Jury selection begins right now in Arizona, and I'm going to check in with some of the Twitter feed, X feed, and some of the text messages from the people that I know who are there in the courtroom. I am here in my home today, grateful to be here. I have a short time frame today because I have a meeting that got rescheduled. You don't need to know the details. It's just one of those things that happens in life. But there are 2 things that are really important today. I want to check in with all my people who are actually in the courtroom. And I want to go over a little bit of one of the things that Lori asked for. She filed a motion last week to ask for the testimony of a specific law enforcement officer to be left out or excluded from the trial proceedings. And that was Tammy Lachik. And she is a crime scene investigator. And I'm going to go through the evidence that she submitted in her report. And we're going to talk about why it is that maybe Lori wants that evidence to be left out of this trial. The other thing that we're going to do, of course, is check in with the courtroom feed and see what's going on in the courtroom. I'm curious to know if any of these most recent motions that have been filed by Lori are going to be addressed by Judge Boreski this morning. For those of you who missed it, yesterday, we received a filing that Lori asked for a new judge on this trial. And she basically said in her motion that she believed Judge Boreski was corrupt and should have recused himself. And she basically slams him for not recusing himself from this. Now, that request was accompanied by an affidavit, which will go to the presiding judge in that court area in Maricopa County. And that judge will have to review this request. Now, usually these things, from what I understand from some attorneys that have commented on the couple of lives that I've done over the last day or so, as well as some research I did on my own, it looks like these kinds of requests for a new judge have to happen 20 days before the trial occurs. Now, everything that Lori put in that motion had to do with her previous trial, the Charles Vallow trial. Doesn't have anything to do with the Brandon Boudreaux trial. So what's interesting is that Lori is citing some things that happened in the courtroom during her previous trial to try and get Judge Boreski removed for this trial. And from what I understand, that's not a thing. If she had wanted a new trial or a new judge for this trial, she would have had to submit that 20 days before the trial. And it would have had to do with the conduct of the judge regarding only this upcoming trial. Now, I know Lori has filed a bunch of motions. There have been pretrial hearings. There was a final trial management conference where she famously asked Judge Boreski verbally to recuse himself for the obvious personal bias that he had against her as a defendant. So I always really enjoy these little things that I have. I'm going to go.
Are you not going to recuse yourself?
No, I'm denying your motion.
Yeah.
I've ruled on the motions as required by law.
Without any kind of a conclusion of law in them, just denied. Does that not show a bias and a prejudice against one single person?
All right, are you done?
Are you not going to recuse yourself?
No, I'm denying your motion. Anything else?
And then later on, towards the end of the hearing.
Are you done? Are you just going to keep?
Some of my favorite little clips to play. So anyway, I'm interested to know if in the courtroom this morning, Judge Boreski is going to address this motion. And we already have a response from the state, which I will go over just really quickly because it's very brief. This is the state's response to the defendant's motion to disqualify Judge Boreski. It says this: the defendant's motion should be denied since, and there are some words missing here. I think it should be since she failed to establish any judicial bias, appearance of bias, or fundamental error. Let me go ahead and share the screen because I know there are some people who have not seen this quite yet. Thanks for your patience. Okay, this is really quite brief. So it says defendant's motion should be denied since they failed to establish any judicial bias, appearance of bias, or fundamental error. Defendant's motion to disqualify the judge relies heavily upon the fact that Judge Boreski has provided legal reasons to deny many of the defendant's motions. He sustained objections made during trial in the Charles Vallow case, and that he found no prejudice to the defendant when he excluded 18 days and scheduled this trial to begin on June 3rd. I think it's supposed to say June 3rd, 2025. The defendant previously incorporated her allegations of judicial bias in her motion for new trial. She also made an oral motion to disqualify this judge on May 14th, 2025. The judge issued a minute entry providing his reasoning for denying a new trial based on the defendant's allegation of impartiality by the judge. On May 14th, 2025, the court put on record his reasons for denying the defendant's motion for the judge to excuse himself. The court put on record that he had no personal bias toward the defendant, that he has accommodated her requests, and sorry about that he has allowed her additional time beyond that allowed in the rules to obtain expert testimony, and that denying her motions when they had no legal basis is not evidence of bias. A trial judge is presumed to be free of bias and prejudice, and a defendant must show by a preponderance of the evidence that the judge was in fact biased. That's State v. Ramsey. And then in State v. Toomey, the Supreme Court found that it, quote, violates the 14th Amendment and deprives the defendant in a criminal case of due process of law to subject his liberty or property to the judgment of a court, the judge of which has a direct personal, substantial pecuniary interest in reaching a conclusion against him. She goes on to say, applying the standard, the court has found judicial recusal constitutionally required only in rare circumstances. That's State v. Granados. And I'm not going to go through the whole State v. Granados, but it basically says the defendant's arguments in support of judicial bias are similar to the allegations made by the defendant in Granados. The defendant's motion to disqualify the judge should be denied since the defendant has not established any judicial bias, appearance of bias, or fundamental error. And these documents were provided to me by Joe Schmo. If you haven't checked out his channel, you should. He is an excellent investigator, and I highly recommend his deep dive on this case, as well as other cases that he comments on. So yes, Ani D, good to see you here. Are you done? Ranks right up there with don't flatter yourself. And guys, I'm working on some merch. I'm working on some t-shirts. And I'm very excited about that possibility. Now, I have heard that the presiding judge has reviewed this motion and denied it, but I haven't been able to find any information verifying that. So I'm continuing to look for that. I have other people helping me look for that as well. And I'm going to go now to share with you the X feed of what is actually happening right now. Apparently, there is a lot going on already. So I always go to Justin Lum because he was the very first reporter on this case for Fox 10 Phoenix. And he says that Obi's son is subbing in for him. And he says to join him as he talks to preview a live stream at 11:30, which will be, that's going to be 1:30 Central Time, which is what I'm on. So 38 minutes ago, Justin Lum reported a last-minute hearing for oral arguments on Lori Daybell's motions was scheduled for 9:30. I'm rushing over now, but we don't have pool camera, so apparently it's been very busy over there. And then he says, as we walked closer to the courtroom, Trina Kay was already out and told us we're done. Motion to disqualify Judge Boreski was denied. So there you go. There is the proof that that has actually happened. And I've got 7 tabs going on here, guys. So please, I'm just grateful for your patience with me as I try to get to everything. Justin says, checking on other motions. Lori's just trying to prolong her field trips. These are commenters. Thank you for continuing. And then I'm not surprised. It's funny that a lot of us are on this boxing thread this morning, thinking of round 3. People asking to post the video because we want to know what was said. And I'm understanding, if I understand correctly, the court itself is going to be the camera for this particular trial, not it was Court TV playing as pool camera. So I've also got the website for the court up as well, so that we can see when they start to stream that hearing. And then Justin Lum is commenting on other cases that he's covering. And so I don't see anything else from him for this morning. Yes, we're scheduled to start with opening statements on June 2nd if we get a jury seated tomorrow, which the seating of the jury went very quickly when I was there last time. And I was surprised. I was really shocked that it went so quickly. And, it was very efficient. However, it was really a little bit nerve-wracking when we started to have to exclude jurors for different reasons. So I'm going to go ahead and share this as well. This is Nate Eaton's X feed. He says, last minute hearing was held this morning in front of criminal presiding judge Jennifer Green in Lori Vallow Daybell's case. She heard Daybell's motion to have Judge Justin Boreski removed from the case. Green denied Daybell's motion. Boreski remains on the case. Jury selection begins this afternoon. So I know that they're going to be going over those electronic questionnaires, I believe, at 1:30 this afternoon. And I would love, Monty D, if we could get a video of Trina K walking up the court steps while Eye of the Tiger plays. But unfortunately, we're never going to get a video of Trina K walking up the court steps because her office is right next door to the courtroom building. And she has a special hallway entrance that she can go into, or she doesn't have to go out into the public and come up through that entrance. So as just like Lori gets to enter through sort of a side entrance and go up without being out in the public, also the prosecutor and her team and some of the family members as well get to do that. So we are all on team justice for sure. It's good to see so many of you returning to the channel. It's great to see so many new names in the chat. Welcome to the channel. I'm grateful for you being here. I think you'll find our community to be a kind and welcoming space. And I hope that you feel free to share your questions and your insights into the trial. I always appreciate everybody's perspective. If you do have questions, please call attention to it with some kind of an emoji, lots of question marks or something that's going to call my attention. I'm a visual person and I have ADHD, so I kind of feel all over the place sometimes whenever I'm doing these live streams, and I'm also trying to reference other materials. So what I want to get to next is Lori's motion to have the testimony of Tammy Lachek excluded from these court proceedings. I want to go over this because we haven't had a chance to talk about it. A lot of people were confused about who Tammy Lachek is. She's a crime scene investigator, I believe, for the Gilbert Police Department. Yes, Gilbert Police Department. And I want to go through the evidence that she recovered and the report that she made, and we can talk about what we think Lori might want to have excluded. Now, as far as timeline for today goes, I know that they are starting with those electronic questionnaires at 1:30. Assuming that there's going to be a half an hour of delay, that means that 2 p.m. would be when that live stream is going to start happening directly from the court feed. So that's 3:30 my time would be when they start. So my plan is to stream that court feed here on this channel starting at 3:30 Central Time. And I'm hopeful that we will be able to see and hear in the courtroom what happens prior to going through those electronic questionnaires for the jury, because I think that some of these other motions that have been unresolved are going to be addressed. Now, obviously, since Judge Boreski still is on the case, the motion to have a new judge, that's been addressed. They won't go over that. But I know there are several things outstanding in front of the court right now. So what I'm hoping to do right now is go over this Tammy Lachek issue and talk about that a little bit. And then I will see you again this afternoon for the electronic jury questionnaire. Now, whoever gets dismissed for either bias or for cause, the rest of the people will appear live tomorrow at 10 a.m. for in-person voir dire. And I don't expect that to be televised because, of course, they want to protect the anonymity of the jurors. It might be possible that they would televise just the defendant, the prosecution, and the judge. That's how the pool camera was situated for the last trial, where we couldn't see the gallery and we couldn't see the jury box. What happened last time for the trial is that they seated all the members of the public and the press on the left side of the courtroom if you're facing Judge Boreski's desk, which is the side of the courtroom that is directly behind the defense table. And on the other side of the courtroom in the gallery, they left all of those seats open for potential jurors. So they filled all of those seats. I believe there were about 40 seats on that side of the courtroom. And then they also filled the 18 seats in the jury box as well, filled with potential jurors. And they did that in-person voir dire by asking the entire gallery these questions, and they had their juror number on a laminated card, and they were supposed to hold up their card if they were going to answer affirmative to any of the questions that were being asked. And they asked things like, do you own a firearm? Do you have experience with firearms? And they asked things like, have you ever had a family member convicted of a violent crime? Those kinds of questions. I was very surprised at how many people had family members, how many people were what I call crime adjacent. They had family members who were involved in violent crimes. It really made me feel less alone. And it also was kind of shocking that so many people were close, had a close friend or an immediate family member who had served jail time for a violent crime. So very interesting. I'm just going to take a second to look at questions. Zara, so Zara says, I usually just listen to Megan. I've been following her for a while, but yesterday there were lots of legal questions that I helped answer to clarify. Lori's going to be different this trial. And I totally agree. Zara, I'm so glad you're here. If at some point, if you want to talk on a Zoom call or something, I would love that. This whole time, I have been wanting to have an attorney to ask questions of, since I'm not an attorney, I don't have legal experience at all. I have a dear friend who is a criminal defense attorney in Los Angeles, but she is extremely busy, as you can imagine. And I've been asking if she would come and comment, but also she's a little hesitant to comment on a case that she doesn't know much about and she hasn't been following it. So I'm going to reach back out to her. But this whole time I've been hoping that I would have an attorney on standby that I could ask questions of. So I really appreciate your input, Zara. I'm glad you're here. And I'm grateful. I'm looking at through all of the names in chat, and I'm so glad to see so many familiar faces, and welcome to all of you for being here. I appreciate all of your contributions and questions. I don't really see any questions so far. So I think what I'm going to do is go on ahead and share this screen with you where we can look at the report that Tammy Lachik filed. Hey there, sis. Good to see you. I don't know who else I am missing. I always like to say hi to the people that I actually know in person. But I think I've got too many tabs open, both in my brain and also on my computer. So I'm going to forego some of that. I really appreciate you guys being patient with me. Okay, so let me share. Let's see if I can share this window. Here we go. Okay. Now I'm also going to apologize, guys, because I do have my dogs here with me right now. One of them is snoring. So if you hear snoring in the background, that is my dog. So before I go into this report that was filed, let me just recap where we are at this point. Trial of Brandon Boudreaux. Brandon Boudreaux is the former nephew of Lori Vallow Daybell. So if you look at a family tree of Lori's family, I wish that I had a graphic. I've tried several times to make a graphic of this, but it's been complicated. And I liked the one that they showed on the documentary Sins of Our Mother, but they left some things out. So if you just look at Lori's immediate family, mom and dad are Barry Cox and Janice Cox. I have a video that I did a deep dive on Barry's side of the family and some of his history, which I think explains the type of father he was, the type of person he was. And I'm hopeful that that's helpful for people to understand a little bit of Lori's mentality. I might have to wake my dog up if she gets any louder. So Janice and Barry are mom and dad. They had 6 children total. Stacy was the oldest of those children. Stacy had a daughter named Melanie. Melanie is who you know as Melanie Boudreaux Pulowski. Melanie was married to Brandon Boudreaux. They had a divorce. They had a custody situation. Apparently, their divorce was highly influenced by Lori. Allegedly, Lori convinced Melanie that Brandon was gay by pointing out, I don't know, there was a video of him dancing with some friends at a club. It was apparently a work event. They were doing some kind of a spoof. That video and I guess some other information to convince Melanie that he was gay and that he was involved in some not so good stuff. Melanie decides to divorce Brandon. They have a divorce that happened. I believe divorce proceedings started in June of 2019, just a month before Charles Vallow was killed. So they get divorced, or they're in the middle of these divorce proceedings. Charles is killed. Lori, Alex, Tylee, and JJ move to Idaho, to Rexburg. And then we know in the timeline that the last time Tylee was seen was September 9th of 2019. The last time JJ was seen was September 23rd of 2019. And on October 2nd, I believe it was, 2nd or 3rd, Brandon Boudreaux was shot at in his driveway as he was coming home from the gym. He noticed that there was a Jeep parked on his street. He noticed that the back window came up. A gun came out of that window and fired a shot. It hit the car sort of on the frame right by the driver's side window, shattering the window. And he hit the gas and left. Called 911. I guess the Jeep took off as well. He called 911 and the police came out, took pictures, took his statements, and they asked him, do you have any enemies? Can you think of anyone who might want to hurt you? And he said, well, there's been some crazy stuff going on with my aunt, but I hope that has nothing to do with this. And he, I think, was right on. He was spot on when that came to mind. He later on hired a private investigator who was one of the people that helped put these puzzle pieces together, contacted Kay and Larry about JJ being missing and Tylee being missing. And eventually they were able to get the different law enforcement agencies to coordinate with each other so that they could do a welfare check. It was just a couple weeks later that Tammy Daybell died. And I think once Tammy Daybell died, that's when bells and alarms were going off with all of these different law enforcement agencies, and they started to coordinate very closely on trying to find the kids. So that is kind of a recap of what happened. I don't believe the charges in this case were filed until 2023, maybe after Lori stood trial in the previous case. And there have been a lot of people who have said, Lori's already been convicted. She's serving 3 consecutive life sentences. Why in the world would we go on with this trial? And the reason is because justice matters. The truth matters. We now have justice for JJ, Tylee, Tammy, and Charles. And now Brandon Boudreaux deserves justice in this attempted shooting. Thank goodness he is still alive. Thank goodness he survived that attempt. And also, thank goodness that these criminals were some of the most inept criminals in history, and they left behind a trail of evidence that allowed them to be found and to be prosecuted. Joe Schmo, it's great to see you. Thank you so much, as always, for sharing documents with me and helping me unpack all of these things. Trial is supposed to begin on Monday with opening statements, but today is when jury selection starts. That's going to be this afternoon, I believe, at 1:30. So right now we're just recapping some things, and I'm going to dig into this report that was filed by Tammy Lachek. So that's where we are right now. Again, if you have questions, please go ahead and star them, or put some kind of thing that you call attention to so that I can see it. I'm going to be checking back in on the chat as much as I possibly can. I'm just getting a text from someone who is doing some research for me. And I just want to mention this. When I first started my channel and started to gain some followers, I had a couple of people reach out to me about being mods, and they were wonderful and they were there. And I think now they just have moved on to other things. And so I have a great mod. I do still keep in touch with those mods. And from time to time they do show up in the chat. But Irish Jen is my go-to, or she was on the last trial. She was a huge help to me. And but she's traveling right now, and I know she's only sporadically available. So if there's anybody else who is interested in modding for the channel, if you're somebody that watches all the time, comments all the time, and you're here anyway, I would love to have your help. So please email me, and I'm going to put up my email address. It's askmegan@gmail.com. Megan with 2 E's. That is correct. I did it that way so people could pronounce it correctly. If you're interested in being a mod for the channel, I would appreciate your help. It gets to be a little bit more than I can handle sometimes. And I always, I like it when Jen is here because she can she comes into my StreamYard studio and stars comments for me so that I can make sure that I don't miss anything. So I'm really grateful for that. So anyway, let's go and look at this. Now, Tammy Lachik is a crime scene investigator with the Gilbert Police Department. Lori Daybell asked specifically in a motion to have her testimony limited or thrown out altogether because she didn't want the evidence that she gathered to be brought into trial. So let's take a look at her report here. She gathered evidence. She gathered a teal-colored hairbrush from a trash can at the Charles Vallow residence where Lori was living. And then she gathered scene photos burned onto a CDR from the Chandler house. And this is what she says in her supplemental notes. Now, this is pretty lengthy, and I'm going to go through all of it because I think that it's important. As always, if you have a question, please try to call attention to it somehow so that when I go back through the chat after I read all of this, I can see it. So this is December 9th. 2019 at approximately 07:15 hours, I was requested by Detective Pillar to respond to the Gilbert Police Main Station to assist with an assault investigation. I arrived at the listed location at approximately 07:20 hours. The scene consisted of 3 residential trash cans located in the secured main station parking lot. So what this says to me, I believe, is that they took the trash cans from the the South Four Peaks house that Charles was renting where Lori was staying, and that they took those trash cans and secured them as evidence. Tammy Lachik did not testify in the first Arizona trial. So this is new information that we have here. So this crime scene investigator went to the police department, and the scene consisted of these 3 residential trash cans. Some of you were asking, did they look in the trash can? Located in the secured main station parking lot. The following is a brief description of the items collected. A teal-colored hairbrush located in one of the trash cans, and then scene photographs burned onto a CDR. A total of 33 photographs were taken of the listed location. I secured from the location approximately 9-10 hours. The scene photographs were burned onto a compact disc, and the items of evidence noted above were securely packaged and impounded at the Gilbert Police Department's property and evidence facility under the appropriate case number. And then this is the supplemental report. And here's the narrative. The following information is to provide descriptions and evidence item numbers for all the physical and digital items collected and impounded by the Gilbert Police Department as of May 3rd, 2020. Evidence from the initial investigation at East Phelps. Bullet fragments, photo lineup created and presented by Detective Ferrer, chronology report, call comments from the shooting investigation, radio 911 audio, photographs of the crime scene. So just so that you know, the East Phelps location is Brandon Boudreaux's home. Interviews related to the shooting at Brandon Boudreaux. Initial interview with Brandon Boudreaux and attempted one-party consent calls on scene at the shooting. Initial interview with Melanie Boudreaux on October 3rd and October 16th. Interview with Brandon Ewell and Claudia Ewell. I believe those are neighbors November 5th, contacted by Melanie and Alex, referencing the Boudreaux. Oh, okay, those aren't neighbors. My mistake. Brandon Ewell and Claudia Ewell were contacted by Melanie and Alex in reference to the Boudreaux children. Jeep Wrangler warrant service, redacted from the Jeep Wrangler, something recovered from the Jeep Wrangler. First gunshot residue kit from inside the Jeep. Second gunshot residue kit from inside the Jeep. Swabs from the steering wheel, passenger side belt buckle, driver's side belt buckle, gear shifter, passenger side interior door handle, lug nuts of the spare tire, driver's side interior door handle, a green colored drinking straw from inside the Jeep, and a CD of photographs. Now, we know that Lori has also asked for the evidence from the Jeep to be excluded from the trial. And we've seen the state's response to that, I believe. So that I'm interested to see if Judge Boreski will address these couple of motions prior to the electronic questionnaires being gone over this afternoon. And then redacted from Zulema and Alex Cox's residence on December 9th, 2019. Now, if you'll recall, I believe that December 11th was the day that Tammy Daybell's body was exhumed from the cemetery in Utah, Springville, Utah. And December 12th was the day that Alex Cox was found unresponsive on the bathroom floor by Zulema's son. Zulema came into the scene while her son was on the telephone with 911 callers. And Alex was taken from that scene and then later pronounced dead. The timing of that has always seemed very suspicious to me, and that is one of the reasons why you'll never be able to convince me that Alex's death was natural causes. The official cause of death was a bilateral pulmonary embolism, meaning blood clots on both sides of his lungs. And again, that's the official cause of death, but the timing is too suspicious. I really don't believe in accidents. At the end of this, after we've gone over this investigation report, I only have about 20 more minutes before I have to go here, guys. But over on my Patreon later today or at some point, I'm going to share with you a dream that I had last night and the Jungian interpretation. I always keep a dream journal because I dream very vividly, and I've always been interested in dream interpretation. Obviously, I'm feeling some anxiety about this trial. So here we go again, round 3, starting over. But I had a really interesting dream last night, and I think the Jungian interpretation of it is very interesting, but I don't want to do that out here in the broader public. So I'll be doing it over on Patreon. Again, if you want to subscribe to my Patreon, I've got a Lori Vallow trial chat over there, which is free. And also just a general Megan Connor chat over there, which is free. And then I do share other content, which is paid membership only. And so that's what I'm going to be doing over there later today. Hopefully doing a live, because I would love to have interactions and comments from you guys about some of the, about what you think about the interpretation of this. Elizabeth Jones, thank you so much. Please do hit the like button. That will ensure that people who are looking for information about the trial will get it. If you engage with the video, the algorithm starts to pull it out to other people who are looking for the same thing. It seems, Monty D says, it seems she's wanting the witness removed instead of the evidence. They would get it in another way. Yeah, but I also don't think that there is any legal basis for the witness or the evidence to be removed. This is a good suggestion. Beach Bum, I'll take a look at doing that as well. Somebody mentioned in the chat that Tammy Lachik had some kind of an alcohol or DUI incident after all of this evidence was collected. So I wonder if that's going to come in. I don't know anything about that, but I've heard that before. So thank you for this comment, Northwest. Assault was later upgraded to attempted murder. And I'm just looking at, thank you for this. Assault shooting was on October 2nd. So for anybody else who's a little confused, December was the time frame that this investigator was looking at the evidence. It was not the time frame that happened. So I just hope nobody else is confused about that. Just wanted to clarify. I have started a couple of questions here that I'll get to in just a minute. And thank you. Okay. Are you aware another judge had a hearing on Lori's motion, lasted 2 minutes? Yes, there was a hearing this morning on Lori's motion to get a new judge on the trial. The presiding magistrate reviewed that motion and denied it. So there will not be a new judge. Thank goodness. We're going to stick with Judge Boreski on this one. Yeah, thank you guys so much for all of your kind thoughts and good wishes for me. I appreciate you. Okay, let's get back to this crime scene investigator report here. Supplemental notes. Brandon told me he was moving to an undisclosed location with his children as a result of Melanie and Alex's actions. Brandon agreed to maintain his phone number and email address for future correspondence. Then on November 18th of 2019, DPS Detective Olzak Gilbert Police Crime Scene Technician Tammy Lachik, this is the subject, the person who's writing this report, the person who submitted this report. Some of these sections of the report are written by other law enforcement officers, but this is all included in Tammy Lachik's supplemental report. And we're trying to figure out why it is that Lori would want Tammy Lachik precluded from presenting evidence and what evidence Lori might not want to have come into this particular trial. So they traveled to Rexburg, Idaho via state of Arizona plane. Once in Rexburg, we met with Detective Hermosillo, Lieutenant Powell, and other law enforcement officers. We were escorted to a private bay where the Jeep Wrangler was stored. Via search warrant, CST Lachik photographed and processed the Jeep for biological evidence and gunshot residue. Once the vehicle was processed for physical evidence, Detective Olzak removed the redacted as evidence to be transported and analyzed in Arizona. I believe that that's the back seat because I know that they did do some blood analysis on that. Once all the evidence was collected and the investigation was discussed with Idaho agencies, we left the private bay, returned to the plane, and flew back to Arizona. Let's see, November 20th, Detective Olzak called to inform me that he processed the redacted, I think that's the back seat, and there was no viable data retained on the device as a result of its stock design. Device, that means it might be something other than the back seat there. Brandon called on 11/22. Brandon called and we discussed a discovery made by Kay Woodcock, Charles Vallow's sister. Kay located a fake Gmail account. We've heard about this before. I think it's KK Walker. That was suspected to have been created by Lori. Lori used the Gmail account to communicate directly with Chad prior to Charles's death. I later forwarded the information to Chandler Detective Moffat as it related to his investigation. Brandon also suggested I look into Melanie Gibb. Melanie was a close friend to Lori and was referred to by Brandon as a recruiter for their religious group. I called the Phoenix Police Department and confirmed they had a police report for the 2018 death investigation of Joseph Ryan. It's redacted, but we know who that is. Lori's ex-husband and Tylee Ryan's father. I also obtained the report number for his autopsy, completed by the Maricopa County Office of the Medical Examiner. I called the OME and confirmed they still had a biological specimen from Joseph's autopsy. I was told the specimen was scheduled to be destroyed soon. Per my request, the OME agreed to hold the specimen until further contact from law enforcement. Detective McDermott, Detective Moffat, and I met with FBI agents to discuss the Chandler Police and Gilbert Police investigations. Special Agent Carrie Cooper initiated a case to assist our agencies with the continued evidence gathering and processing. During our discussion, the primary focus for both investigations was to check the welfare of Lori's children, JJ and Tylee. Neither of the children had been seen or heard from since September of 2019. Then November 26th, I spoke with Brandon, who received information that Tylee may be at her brother Colby Ryan's house. And then supplemental notes. Alex Cox's autopsy, blood blot from Alex's autopsy, and major case prints from Alexander Cox. Evidence collected from the Ford F-150 which I believe was Chad's truck, and the Nissan Rogue, which was Lori's. This is all very standard. They did some cutouts, seatbelts and seats, the registration, an American airline flight receipt, the patriarchal blessing letter authored by Chad for Alex, taco time and shell receipts. Actually, this must be Alex's truck. I apologize. This is Alex's Ford F-150 that had that interesting license plate on it. So these are things that were collected from Alex's truck. Patriarch letter authored by Chad Daybell for Alex, taco time and shell receipts, foam earplugs, a .22 caliber Remington practice round, and then Nissan Rogue. Trace tape from all of the relevant places, a CD of digital photographs, U.S. currency in the amount of $8.85, the ignition key, and then more cutouts and tapes from the Ford F-150. And this is what the supplemental notes say here. I'm just going to check back in really quick. Yeah, you're right. The truck was Alex's. Just looking for questions, guys, trying hard not to read the comments too much just because I will get distracted and we will run out of time. So Tammy Lachik is a crime scene investigator with the Gilbert Police Department. And the reason we're going over this report is because Lori has asked that her testimony or her appearance be entirely left out or precluded from this trial. So we're trying to figure out. I agree with the fact that other people should be charged in this case, but they don't really answer to the public, to be honest with you. And I think that if there is enough evidence for a conviction, that they will bring charges, even lesser charges. So just wanted to mention that. Judge Boreski was overly fair to Lori. Overly accommodating was the phrase that he used, and I completely agree with that. Although, of course, Lori disagrees because anybody who's against Lori is evil, awful, terrible person. Okay, let's get to the rest of this here because I only have about 10 minutes left. The known phone numbers associated with Brandon Boudreaux's shooting, and they list those, they're redacted. I received an email from Brandon that was discovered and forwarded to him by Charles' sister, Charles Vallow's sister, Kay Woodcock, redacted within Lori's family. The email was drafted by Chad and sent to Lori. I later shared this information with the combined law enforcement agencies. Now, what is redacted there, I believe, is Lori's request to have Chad analyze light and dark ratings of all the people in Lori's family. I reviewed the surveillance redacted from Melanie Gibbs' address. She had not returned home and there was no evidence that JJ was in her custody, I believe is what that says. Then December 5th, Brandon sent me an email that was drafted by Natalie Pulowski, that's Ian's ex-wife, who expressed, Melanie was married to Brandon Boudreaux. They divorced. Melanie then married Ian Pulowski. Very quickly, they met and then married within 2 weeks. They were married in Las Vegas the day after Alex and Zulema were married in Las Vegas. Very interesting timing, don't you think? Ian's ex-wife is Natalie Pulowski. They have children together. So Natalie Pulowski, who expressed fear for herself and her children. Natalie was the recent ex-wife to Ian, and they had children in common. Natalie tracked down Brandon after she discovered Ian married Brandon's ex-wife, Melanie, on November 30th. After they married, Melanie told Ian about her spiritual visions, redacted. Ian shared this information with Natalie, and they each became concerned for their welfare. Ian and Natalie requested to speak with law enforcement after learning about the criminal investigations in Arizona related to Melanie's family. Natalie and Ian were both located in Rexburg, so I called Detective Hermosillo to advise him of my contact with Brandon. Rexburg police and the FBI met with and interviewed Natalie and Ian later that day. It was learned that Ian and Natalie divorced in August of 2019. So they just divorced in August of 2019, and by November, he was remarried. That's wild. Ian met Melanie soon after then. They married in November 2019. Since their marriage, Melanie told Ian that she believed in a new religion referred to as redacted. I believe that's Church of the Firstborn. Melanie went on to explain the redacted. Melanie did not provide the children's names, and Ian did not know which children she meant. I would love to know what is in that redaction. Ian identified Alex Cox as Melanie's uncle and said Alex married Zulema Pastenis on November 29th, 2019. Zulema believed redacted natural disasters. I think that's Zulema believed she could control natural disasters or cause them. Zulema further believed an earthquake would occur in Salt Lake City in July 2020, which would begin the war of good versus evil. Melanie also told Ian that Chad and Alex redacted. Alex later told Chad about his failed attempt, and Chad told Alex that God moved the bullet, so future attempts to redacted. I don't know if that's in relation to Tammy or not. The hearsay information, Ian, because there was an attempted shooting on Tammy that was not successful. Tammy said to law enforcement she thought it was a paintball gun, but it was actually Alex. It was a real gun, and it was definitely a failed attempt on her life. So that may be what they're referencing there. The hearsay information Ian shared with law enforcement provided insight to possible motives for the crimes committed, with Melanie, Lori, Alex, Chad, and whomever else could be related to the investigations. Ian agreed. We know that Ian agreed to wear a wire to record some of these conversations. And we did get some of those recordings, although it wasn't really, they didn't confess to any crimes, but it was some insight into what they believed. After I learned the above information, surveillance began at Zulema's Gilbert residence. So Zulema was being surveilled then at this time in early December, which means they probably had surveillance on Alex as well. I believe I remember hearing somebody say that. Ian continued to audio record his time with Melanie. According to Ian, Alex called Melanie and told her he would not be returning to Idaho. Chad also contacted Melanie and told her not to fight for the custody of her children because he'd had a prophecy that the children would return to her. Melanie believed Chad and maintained her loyalty to Lori and him. Then December 11th, the Fremont County Sheriff's Office exhumed Tammy Daybell's body from her grave in Salt Lake City, Utah. The preliminary results from her autopsy appeared her death was, and we know that this is asphyxiation at the hands of another. Brandon and Melanie had a court hearing in Mesa, Arizona on that day for the custody of their children. Melanie did not appear, and Brandon was awarded temporary custody. December 12th, Gilbert police responded to Zulema's address after Alex was found unresponsive in the master bedroom. Alex was transported to the Banner Gateway Hospital where he was pronounced deceased. Zulema provided an initial statement but asked for a lawyer before detailed information could be gathered. A residential search warrant was drafted and served at the residence. Multiple photographs were taken and Zulema's smartphone, Alex's smartphones, and medications were collected as evidence. It was learned the medications were purchased in Mexico by Alex on December 7th. There were multiple firearms, ammunitions, and a duffel bag with redacted, which I think was a weapon, found during the search. A letter was found in Alex's truck and dated November 24th, 2019. The letter was drafted by Patriarch Chad Daybell to Alexander Lamar Cox, which described Alex's spiritual history and role within the, I think, redacted, but I think it's Church of the Firstborn. In the 4-page document, Chad explained how Alex was soon to move to the redacted, but I think it's other side, and that his redacted, but I think his mission was over or something like that. Chad encouraged Alex to embrace what was coming because he would become a patriarch in your own home during his next life. Alex and Zulema's phones were forwarded for forensic analysis. Then December 13th and 16th through 16th, during a conference call, information was exchanged about Alex's death investigation as well as what was learned in Idaho. Detective McDermott interviewed redacted friends and all these redacted who confirmed that they had not seen or heard from redacted in months. And I think this is Tylee. Alex's autopsy was completed, and the preliminary results were that his death was natural as a result of blood clots to his lungs. Additional toxicology tests were requested. Then December 17th, during a conference call, it was learned that Redacted's phone was used in October and recently on December 3rd in Kauai, Hawaii. Fremont County SO learned that Chad was to receive a substantial insurance payout because Tammy increased her life insurance policy before she died. Lori and Chad were using new phone numbers and believed to be in Hawaii. Ian told Rexburg PD and the FBI that Melanie said she would go to prison or die before turning against Lori and Chad. That statement was not recorded. That's a pretty groundbreaking statement, you guys. I just want to sit with that for a second. Just checking chat as well. Sorry for the dog noises. So that's a pretty bold statement. Ian told Rexburg PD and the FBI that Melanie said she would go to prison or die before turning against Lori and Chad. That to me means she has information. She's not going to give it up. Chandler Detective Moffat and I interviewed Melanie Gibb at the Gilbert Police Department. During our interview, Melanie was forthcoming about her close friendship with Lori and Chad until recently. Melanie confirmed Chad believed he had a spiritual experience and was close with God. As a result, Chad could see light or dark in people, I think is what that redacted is, if someone redacted. Melanie denied knowledge about the attempted homicide against Brandon, but said Lori, Chad, and Alex saw Brandon redacted. Melanie did not know where, I think, Tylee and JJ were. Melanie described Tylee as always angry and did not talk much. Melanie was told by Lori that Tylee went to BYU for college. I'm just inserting where I know this is what redacted is. Melanie said JJ was regularly in good spirits and had, I believe, autism, which made him hyperactive. Melanie said she visited Lori, Chad, and Alex in September. JJ was present during most of her time spent in Idaho. Lori made comments to Melanie, and they're spelling this with I-E. This is Melanie Gibb, so don't get confused, about redacted because he was hyper. Melanie believed JJ's behavior was a result of his autism, I think. Melanie left Lori's residence on 9/23 and JJ was present. Lori asked Melanie to take JJ with her, but Melanie declined. In response to our request, Melanie agreed to be interviewed again if and when needed and said she would assist law enforcement however needed. I don't believe that Lori asked Melanie to take JJ with her because I think JJ was already deceased at that point when Melanie Gibb left the apartment on the 23rd. Later that day, Detective McDermott and I contacted Lori's sister, Summer Shiflett. Summer denied knowledge for where Tylee and JJ were located and had not seen them in months. Summer believed both children were in the care of Lori. Summer was protective of Lori and believed Kay Woodcock was using law enforcement as a tool to gain custody of JJ. Summer was encouraged to relay to Lori that we, law enforcement, simply needed to confirm Tylee and JJ were not in danger and that their welfare could be confirmed in person or via video call. I provided Summer with my business card and we concluded our contact. I later spoke with Lori's mother, Janice Cox, via phone. Janice was also confident that Tylee and JJ were well and in the custody of Lori. Janice did not have further information and I requested she pass my name and contact number to Lori. I met with Zulema and returned her smartphone because it was used for her work. Zulema did not have further information, nor did she want to discuss the investigations. The gunshot residue kit that was collected from the Jeep Wrangler was forwarded to the Phoenix Police Department for analysis. This was delayed as a result of miscommunication for which Criminal Lab processed such a request. December 19th, the Rexburg Police Department officially entered redacted into NCIC as missing endangered juveniles. I believe that's obviously Tylee and JJ. Chad and Lori retained legal counsel and were told to provide proof that the children's welfare was alive and in good health. If they refused, a media release would be made. Per their legal counsel, Chad and Lori's statement was that redacted. Rexburg Police made an official media release on the 20th of December requesting any information for the welfare and location of JJ. On the 21st, the Kauai Police Department became involved with the investigation and confirmed Lori and Chad were living on the island. Colby called Detective McDermott and expressed concern for his siblings after he watched the media release for their welfare. Colby said he last talked with his mother, Lori, on November 27th after Detective McDermott and I first talked with Colby. Colby asked Lori about Tylee and JJ, then told her that police were looking for them. Lori told Colby that Tylee and JJ were, quote, fine, and she would communicate and cooperate with law enforcement. Lori never attempted to contact with the police. Colby also told Detective McDermott that he recently came into possession of Lori's Nissan Rogue. Evidence gathered thus far confirmed Lori previously used the Nissan during the time frame when redacted Tylee and JJ went missing. As a result, Detective McDermott facilitated the tow and impounded the Nissan as evidence. The Nissan was later searched and processed by Gilbert Police Crime Scene Specialist Scott. During the processing of the vehicle, distinct stains were located in the back passenger seat of the area of the vehicle. The stains were confirmed to be blood. As a result, Detective McDermott facilitated the tow and impounded Alex Cox's Ford F-150 that was still parked at Zulema's residence. The truck was impounded as evidence. Detective McDermott contacted Colby and obtained the story for how he came into possession of the Nissan. In response to questions, Colby did not believe the blood in the Nissan came from his family. Colby and his family provided voluntary buccal swabs for exclusion with further DNA analysis. During their contact, Colby also revealed that JJ previously had a service dog. After Charles Vallow was killed, Lori returned the dog to the business from where it came. And then Alex's vehicle was processed. Melanie was interviewed again. She didn't provide additional leads. It says she was dishonest about facts, redacted, I guess, regarding the disappearance of the children. Melanie didn't provide any additional leads or investigative information. She was not challenged on her lies because Ian was present and still cooperating with law enforcement. I guess they were hoping that they were still going to get some information from those recordings that Ian was making. So I am out of time for this morning, and I just want to reassure you I am going to be back at 3:30 Central Time, 1:30 Pacific Time. That's when the electronic jury questionnaires are going to be gone over, and I'm hoping that we will have some more we will have some more motions that will be addressed by the judge. I did start just a couple of questions. Chelsea asked in the arrest video of Melanie P. She's at her in-laws' house with Alex trying to get her kids. The police did not allow it. Thoughts on what may have happened if she got them? Well, unfortunately, Alex was sitting outside the residence in a van with a weapon. And so I don't think that would have been a good outcome. I think it would have been tragic. So I'm really glad that she did not get the children at that time. Again, over 800 people in the chat watching the live stream. Please hit the like button on your way out. Please share this with anybody else you know who's looking for information about this case. And I will be back later this afternoon. I am so grateful to have all of you here. Thank you for your support. And thank you so much for being here to listen to this information. I'm looking forward to digging into this with you and examining the behavior of Lori and trying to find out what is going on in her addled brain. So I do want to just mention one more time before we go that the motion that Lori filed to have a new judge on her trial has been denied this morning. The presiding judge did hear that motion in an emergency meeting earlier this morning at 9:30. Took about 2 minutes, and the judge denied that motion. So thanks, you guys, for being here, and I will see you later on this afternoon. Take care.